Hello, and welcome to ARTFul Insights. My name is Susan Shifrin. I'm the director of ARTZ Philadelphia, and together, you and I are going to spend about 30 to 40 minutes looking at a few pieces of art together. This video is produced in partnership between Dementia Society of America and ARTZ Philadelphia. Each month, we offer a program online, a live program with a small group of people joining together to talk about works of art from museums and cultural centers across the country, a different museum or center each month. And then in addition to that live program, we then produce a video like this. We will be looking at the same works of art that we did in the live group, but with the video, first of all, it's 30 to 40 minutes in length. You can watch it any time of day or night that suits you. And it's an opportunity to have a more intimate, a more self-driven conversation about these works of art. I will ask a few questions to get us started, give you a few things to think about. I will share with you some of the observations and thoughts that folks from the live program might have brought up that I think might be interesting for you to consider. But really, this video each month is about you. It's about what you see in these works of art, how you respond to them, and just having the opportunity to look at them and think about them at your own pace. If you're watching this video with someone, then by all means, feel free to pause the video from time to time if you'd like, so that you can have your own conversation. If you're watching on your own, then I'm delighted, and it'll be a conversation between the two of us. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the museum or cultural center that we will be visiting this month. Welcome to ARTFul Insights. So today we are traveling virtually to an arts center that is not too far from ARTZ Philadelphia's hometown of Philadelphia. We will be visiting the Riverfront Renaissance Center for the Arts in Millville, New Jersey. I'll tell you a little bit more about them in just a few minutes, but what we will be doing today is looking at one work of art from a recent exhibition there of works by New Jersey artists. And so without further ado, let me come back in just a moment. I want to show you the front of the gallery so that we can imagine what it would be like to walk across the street into the Riverfront Renaissance Center for the Arts, and then we'll get to work and look at the piece of art that I talked about. Just a moment. So here we are at the front entrance to the Riverfront Renaissance Center for the Arts in Millville, New Jersey. I want to tell you a little bit about this wonderful arts center that has partnered with us. And first, let me say a shout out and thank you to Diane for partnering with us and allowing us to walk through these doors, even if it's only virtually, and experience some of the wonderful local art that is being shown at the Riverfront Renaissance Center for the Arts. So, to tell you a little bit about this art center, it opened in April of 2001, and the mission of the center is to advance this art center as the focal point for cultural, educational, and artistic enrichment, and to create a sense of community, positively impacting both the economic and cultural vitality of the Millville Glasstown Arts District. Since the Arts Center first opened, It's been based on an idea developed collaboratively by artists, the city's leaders, and community members, all the way back in 1999. These groups and individuals saw a need for a community arts center and a leader in downtown revitalization efforts through the arts. And in 2001, this Center for the Arts opened and made it happen. What was once an abandoned men and boys store on a main street of vacant stores was rehabilitated as a gallery and art center. So that's what we're seeing here. And now let's just step inside and start looking at the piece of art we're going to be talking about today. So here is the painting that we are going to be talking about together today, looking at and talking about. And I just want to start us off, as I often do, by inviting you to just spend a few minutes taking in this painting. So, what do you see first? Where does your eye take you immediately when you look at this painting for the first time? That's one question. Do you feel as though this is a welcoming painting, that if you imagine it's a painting of a real place, which as it turns out it is, that you are being invited into that place by this painting? If your answer is yes, then where are you invited to go? And how do you make your way through the painting? If the answer is no, that you don't feel welcomed to enter into the location that this painting is depicting, then why do you think you don't feel welcome? Is there something you see that says to you, no, stand back, you're here to stand outside, not to come in? So imagine, as I suggested at the beginning, imagine that this is a depiction of a place that actually exists, or that exists in the mind of the artist, and the artist wants you to feel that it is a real place. Where do you feel that you're drawn to go in this place? Is there a particular way in to the painting? Imagine you were going to step into the painting from where you're seated. I know it's asking a bit much, but it's one way we have, particularly with a painting that shows us a place or a landscape. It's one way we have always of connecting with a painting, to ask ourselves, is the door open to me? Is the painting inviting me in? And the rest of our conversation today is going to really depend on our being willing to imagine ourselves in this place, which is, I think, what the artist would like us to do. So we're going to be obliging and do it. So I asked you, where would you enter into this painting? And I'm wondering if you feel, as I have to admit I do, that there is a big welcome sign set up for us because the pathway that we see opens out. Do you see what I mean? It's, how can I explain this? It is a narrow pathway towards the back of the painting that gets wider and wider as it approaches us. And in fact, there's even a suggestion that the pathway continues off the edge of the painting. What that allows us to do as viewers is to feel it's opening up to where we are. So it's as though we've already stepped foot on this pathway. That's what the artist has accomplished by creating this perspective and this way of showing the pathway in action. It's inviting us in to walk ourselves on the pathway. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot, kind of suspending our disbelief and letting our imaginations go with it. But that's what looking at art is often about, is it's a compact with the artist, right? The artist presents us with something, and we have the opportunity to make it come true. So that's what we're doing here. So if this pathway is our way into the painting, then we could ask, so what do we see as we walk along this pathway? As you may know, in addition to these videos, we have online group conversations about the same paintings that you and I, same works of art, not always paintings, that you and I then look at together in these videos. And in that conversation that we had with a group, the first thing that everyone seemed to notice was the flowers. And I'm guessing it's kind of hard to miss the flowers, right? Because of the incredible bright colors they give us. So the first question that came up was, what kind of flowers are they? Now, perhaps you are not a gardener and don't really care what kind of flowers they are. That's okay. But when we start to talk about what this painting invites us to think about, because the flowers are so prominent, you can imagine that someone who does like to garden would really want to know, what does that look like to you? Does it look like geraniums? Someone in our group suggested they might be petunias. Someone else pointed out that these flowers are different than these flowers, right? So I'm curious as to what you, if you are a gardening expert or someone who loves to have your hands in the soil and grow beautiful flowers and plants, I'm wondering what you would imagine these flowers are. So why does it matter what kind of flowers they are? I mean, as we've said, it could matter if you happen to be someone who loves flowers, loves to identify them, is getting ideas from this painting about what flowers to plant together in your hanging basket. But there's something else. And this dominated our online group conversation about this painting. The question was, where are we? Where is this? That started a whole discussion about what kinds of flowers would grow where, what kind of climate do we think we're looking at? What does the white paint, assuming it's paint, what does the white paint on the buildings suggest to us about where this might be? So we have two parallel threads that we're thinking about. One is, once we decide we're going to jump into the painting and follow the path wherever it leads us, what are we going to see? So, for instance, if we go around this corner, what's going to meet us around this corner? That's one thread that we're following. The other thread is, where is this? Is it a place that you recognize? Maybe you've been someplace that looks like this, and you can use that as a way of imagining where this might be located. So we're looking for our bearings, we could say, in two different ways. One has to do maybe with the story that we imagine taking place within this painting. The other has to do with where that story is taking place. One of the things we could look at, and we did in our online conversation group, is one of our members noticed if we are on this path, as we've said we are, and we look straight back, we see this. It looks like either a door or a doorway, right? Let me see if I can show us a little bit more. Either a door or an open doorway. Doesn't seem to show us a doorknob or hinges, so maybe it is an open doorway. Kind of dark, so we don't see furnishings inside, we don't see people inside. But maybe it's just inviting us to come and explore. You know, the pathway leads right there. But I'm getting off the track here. One of our participants in our online conversation said, now that looks like a door or a doorway that is human-sized. If we follow the path, we could walk right in there and it would accommodate an average height human being. But she said, what about something like this? Or something like this? These aren't human-sized doors at all. In fact, even if they were windows, they're pretty small, aren't they? So she thought, what if they're for animals to come in? At which point one of our gardeners in our conversation said, no. If they were for animals, then you would see that this beautiful flower bed would have been trampled with a dog or a cat or a porcupine or whatever going in and going out. And you know, I think she has a point. Let's just make sure that she was looking carefully enough and see, do we see anything that looks like flowers have been squashed? I don't know, what do you think? Do you see anything here that looks like maybe somebody trampled on the flowers? I mean, perhaps there's more green here than in the rest of it. I guess perhaps we could imagine that there's more green because the flowers were trampled. So could it be a door for an animal? I'll leave that up to you. Most of our participants in our online conversation were convinced by the argument that no, the flowers are still in too good shape. No one's walking back and forth on them. So then the question arose, well, then what do we make of these very small openings? And the member of our group who had said, no, they can't be animal entryways or exits because the garden's in too good shape, she said, well, what if these are cottages, and the cooking and socializing takes place on the basement floor. And so what we're seeing here is part of a window. And she said, perhaps the sleeping quarters are upstairs. And, right here, we don't even see windows, which would make, I guess, for peaceful sleeping. There are a couple of windows here, right? And I think that both of these hanging baskets seem to be hanging from a windowsill. It's hard to tell, isn't it? The flowers are so lush, we can't really see what they're attached to. But we could imagine maybe a window there. We don't have to decide right now. Okay, so maybe these are cottages. The kitchens are downstairs to keep things cool. Heat rises. And the sleeping quarters are upstairs. If the kitchens are below stairs, then that started a conversation about, if you put together cooking quarters in the basement, these incredibly lush, healthy-looking flowers, the white paint on the dwellings, and the sky, I guess we could say, we started thinking that perhaps this is someplace in a warm climate. Cooking quarters downstairs means the heat is not going to be trapped in the kitchen, causing the poor cook to be sweltering. The flowers get plenty of sun, but then, as another one of our participants pointed out, they'll get plenty of sun, but they're not going to look like this unless it's a place with a lot of rain, or a place that is on the ocean with a lot of humidity. And indeed, one of our participants in the conversation online said, oh, yes, indeed, if you don't have the water, you're not going to have these beautiful plants. We went a little further and went back to the fact, look how high up these baskets are hanging. There's no way, except with a very, very, very long watering hose or wand, and even then, no way that you could easily water these from the ground. So our group thought, that suggests there's a lot of rain. What do you think about that idea? Okay, so we've been going down that path of where is this? Our group, having decided that it's a warm climate, actually even some of them felt it was a hot climate, and we'll get to why in a moment. Warm climate, humid enough for flowers to thrive even if they don't get a thorough watering from below. Lots of foliage, rich green foliage. People started throwing out, well, this looks to me like someplace in Europe. Another person said, oh, absolutely in Europe, probably in France, probably the south of France, not Paris, definitely outside the city. Someone else said, it maybe could also be Greece, because there are whitewashed buildings like this in Greece and it's very warm. Everyone seemed to think that it was on the Mediterranean somewhere, the Mediterranean Sea. And I'm wondering, have you traveled to Europe at all? Have you traveled to the region around the Mediterranean, France, Italy, Greece? Those seem to be the places that were on the minds of our participants in our conversation. So while we're trying to figure out where we are, one of our members just said, you know what? I'm not even sure I care where we are. I just wish I were there now. I'd love to stroll around, pick some flowers. Hey, I hope there's some good food here somewhere. And that started us on a conversation of what you might smell or hear as you were walking down this path. What do you think you would smell just by looking at this and knowing what we've talked about so far? That maybe there's some cooking going on downstairs. Maybe it's a Mediterranean town. Maybe it's very near the sea. What kinds of things do you think you'd hear? And what would the air feel like? Some of our folks in our online conversation said it felt to them that it was very sunny out. They looked, for instance, at this building and said, well, look, this wall looks bright, bright white. And under the foliage, it seems more in shadow. So perhaps the sun is high in the sky and casting its rays right here. So perhaps the sun is high overhead and casting its full light on this wall, but the foliage is casting a shadow. What do you think? Does that make sense? I'm not very good, I must admit, at figuring out if the sun is shining from here, where are we going to see the shadows? But I bet you're a lot better at this than I am. If the sun is high in the sky, then it probably is quite warm, isn't it? Especially with that bright white. So I'm going to suggest that we take a pause. We've talked about so much here. I'd like for you to have an opportunity to just absorb it. We've talked about flowers. We've talked about climate. We've talked about wondering what the function of these buildings are, functions are. We've talked about where this might be. Is it by the sea? Is it in France? Is it in Italy? Is it in Greece? So take a few moments and just peruse the painting. And then when you come back, we'll talk a little more and then we'll wrap things up. So I hope you had a good time sitting back, envisioning yourself walking down this path, or riding a bike down this path, or wheeling down this path. I hope you had a good time doing that. I hope you also had a chance to think about what it would feel like to be here. Would it be warm? Would there be a sea breeze? Does it feel like it's hot sun or cloudy? You might have noticed some things we didn't even talk about. And that's part of the fun of looking at a painting like this. There's always more to notice. So, as we head towards wrapping up, I do have a question for you. Did you notice any people in this picture? Or if there aren't any people visible to our eye, would you say that there are people somewhere because of other things that we see in the painting that tell us this is a populated space? You may be wondering just what I'm getting at. So for instance, we talked a little while ago, about maybe that door is open. Maybe it's an open doorway. So someone would have had to open it for us, right? To let us in. And then look at all these pots, hanging pots, planted flower beds, maybe slightly trampled flower beds if an animal's going in and out. Somebody must have put the flowers and the plants in these pots and in this bed, right? So we may not see people, but their presence is here. We can feel it, right? I wonder, would you imagine hearing from around the corner? Maybe there's a little cafe around the corner and there are outdoor tables and people are sitting at them talking, and you can hear the clink of wine glasses and people scraping their plates because the food is just so good. Another possibility, which someone in our conversation group online mentioned, is, what if it's siesta time and everyone's asleep? If it's the height of the heat, if the sun is overhead, it's a hot climate, say like Greece or Italy or south of France, maybe people are taking a nap, and maybe we could say it's dark in here because the lights are off so that someone can get a nice nap. Does this feel like a space to you where people are taking a nap and it's quiet? Or does it feel to you like a space that's just the beginning, and around that corner there's food and laughter and talk? What do you think? I think that we have come to the time when I want to share with you the title of the painting and the artist who created it. So, we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out, where is this place, right? Well, the title will confirm for us where it is. The title is Stops, S-T-O-P-S, Greek Walkway. Stops could be a family name, or it could be the name of the town. Not sure, but Greek Walkway. Either it's in Greece, or it's a walkway fashioned after Greece, inspired by Greece, right? The artist is Lynn Martini. She's a member of the Society of New Jersey Artists. So we leave perhaps with a lot of questions, but I hope for you, you've had a lot of leisure as we've looked at this painting to imagine yourself in this place, wherever it is, to imagine the smells, to imagine the sounds. And if you've been someplace like this, have a conversation with someone about your memories that were brought to life by this painting. I'll be back in a moment to wrap things up. Once again, I want to give a shout out to our friends at the Riverfront Renaissance Center in Millville, New Jersey. I want to thank them for partnering with us so that we could bring you that beautiful painting by one of New Jersey's own artists. And I hope you've enjoyed sharing with me in imagining the story of the space, stories, imagining where it is, imagining what it would feel like, smell like, taste like, to be in that little town. And I hope that it's inspired you to go look at some photographs. If you're a world traveler, this might be just the time to look at some photographs of places you've traveled, spend some good time sharing your memories with somebody, or just to look some more at the painting, spend some more time with it yourself, and talk aloud to yourself. We are sometimes our best conversationalists, don't you think? In any event, I just want to thank you again for joining us today for ARTFul Insights. I'm Susan Shifrin, the director of ARTZ Philadelphia, and on behalf of Dementia Society of America, our sponsors for this program, on behalf of our friends at Riverfront Renaissance Center for the Arts in Millville, New Jersey, and on behalf of my organization, ARTZ Philadelphia, thank you so much for joining us today for ARTFul Insights. Take care.